So how did you get to TFS? Where did it all begin for you?
Well, I've always loved like movies and creative writing and stuff. And I just wanted a more hands-on, I guess, learning experience when it came to writing and the film industry and stuff. And a lot of these big universities, they have good film programs and stuff, but it's not as hands-on as I would like. And so it just was more, I felt it was more personal. And yeah, like I just always been into creative writing and creating stories and stuff and conjuring up like weird shit in my head. So I thought it would be the next best career choice to write movies and stuff.
So what was it about the writing or the movies that got you interested in the writing?
I guess I would say the characters and just how they take ordinary, situations and make them extraordinary, and just dialogue itself, like Quentin Tarantino and Aaron Sorkin and stuff. I love their movies just because of the dialogue alone. It just, you don't need action and you don't need like big visuals. It's just them speaking words that just captivates you, and that's what I wanted to do to other people.
Mm-hmm. And it's always interesting whenever I think about the writing aspect. Because I'll be very honest with you. I mean, I don't know how it is for you or everyone else when you did your writing class and whatnot, how the classmates were, but I can certainly tell you that in my filmmaking class, I mean, as much as we all liked the scripts and whatnot, we were all more kind of the set oriented. So everyone wanted to direct, everyone wanted to light, everyone wanted to be on the camera, everyone wanted to edit, and there wasn't too much around the script part. It was just like, yeah, just get it done. We'll write, you know, a romance drama or a rom-com or some drug addict that, beats up his girlfriend or something along those lines. There wasn't so
Yeah.
much creativity. It wasn't about creating great stories. It's just getting on set. So how do you find the script part? I know this is going to sound really generic and probably obvious, but I just want to hear your opinion. So how can scripts be so special, and why do you think that writing a script is a very specific art form?
Well, because it's kind of an expression of yourself. A lot of people's scripts, they're speaking in their own voice. So that alone, you get to know what the person is like just based on the kind of stuff they write, which I think is cool. And I'm not saying like directors and stuff aren't creative. That's not what I'm saying at all. They're extremely creative. It's just there's something about seeing words that you wrote down and characters that you conjured up in your head um, coming to life on screen, and that is just, I don't know. It just, you're on cloud nine when you see something that you took out of your head and now it's actually a reality. So I think, I don't know, it's a special relationship between the writer and his story, and essentially he's showing the world or letting the world into his mind, into the writer's mind. And I think that's, I don't know, it's pretty cool experience.
So how would you describe your style? Like, what are some of your favorite stories to tell?
I like my favorite kind of like stories I like to write and movies I like to watch, I guess, are like dramedies, I guess, so like Little Miss Sunshine and movies like that. Kind of realistic, like kind of not realistic, but it feels real when you're watching it to a certain extent. And I guess that's the kind of style I like. But I also, since we're doing this short film, I like horror as well. Mostly like horror comedies. Like I like the juxtaposition between something really messed up and scary, and then kind of flipping on its head and relieving the tension with some humor. So I'm very comedy orientated, but I like yeah, like dramedies and horror, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because I was going to say that was very interesting that you brought up the fact that, yeah, you love the dramedies and yet you wrote a zombie movie.
Yeah. Well, this short film was actually something I wrote like a long time ago, and I just had it sitting like on the back burner basically. I just thought it was a cool idea to like, it's very cliche to see someone's life flashing before their eyes, but I think it's kind of unique to put it in this kind of context, someone's life flashing before their eyes because they're turning into the undead. So I thought that was like a cool concept to kind of flip it on its head.
Hmm. Was there anything that, by the way, for anyone who's watching, probably not sure what we're talking about. So, Peter Shamun wrote an amazing short film called "Becoming One of Them," which is being crowdfunded as we speak, which is about a man who's in the verge of turning into a zombie. He got bitten by a zombie during an apocalypse, and he's turning into a zombie. We're kind of watching like his last few moments, his decisions, his regrets, and yeah, having those flashbacks to what life was good beforehand, and you know it's all going out the window because he's turning into a zombie. Which I have to say, Peter, I mean, as soon as I read the script, I was like, holy crap,
Oh,
because I was like, wow, because I mean, I'm not a huge fan in horror or zombies. I like the only zombie movies I think I've watched has been I've seen a little bit of Peter Jackson's Brain Dead. Um,
okay.
I think I've seen a little bit of another one of PJ's zombie flicks. And then I saw 300. No, not 300. What am I talking about? The Brad Pitt
30.
the Brad Pitt zombie movie,
Oh, World War Z.
World War Z. Yes.
Yeah.
And I
And
mean,
see, when it comes to horror, like I'm not a huge fan of like really messed up like psychological horrors. I'm kind of a fan of like the classics, like Universal Monsters and like Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and like those kind of things. Like kind of like the cheesy horror, not like the messed up like psychological stuff.
yeah, it's just I guess more about having fun rather than just being scary.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what gave you an inspiration for the story?
I guess I'm not sure. I'm really into like zombies and stuff, and I always just thought like, well, this was before I wrote this before The Walking Dead, so I know they kind of dabbled with this on The Walking Dead when, I mean, when Shane, I don't know if you watch it, but Shane, a character gets bit, and basically like he starts having like flashes and stuff, and kind of going downhill to becoming a zombie. But I wrote this before that, and I just thought it was a cool, like no one's ever like shown what it's like to true like once you're bit and you're coming down with the actual like disease. No one's actually shown like what you go through like before you actually turn. Like usually the person just dies and he gets up and he's a zombie. So I wanted to kind of just show people my take of what it feels like when you get bit and now your whole life is kind of just draining out of you and you're becoming a monster.
Hmm. But I mean, even one thing that I think that you do really, really well that, yeah, because I mean, I also just recently watched the Maze Runner 3, The Death Cure, and there is a moment in there where one of the main characters, because that movie does involve zombies to a certain degree, where one character does end up becoming a zombie, but like for 2 minutes and then gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
But something that really struck me with yours is I felt like there was more of a focus on the individual rather than the fact that it was going to be turned to a zombie to the extent that in the end, well, I guess we could spoil this. In the end, where he does become a zombie, and I mean, I always imagined like if this guy was walking in the crowd of a bunch of other zombies, and the fact that he just became one of these guys, but you knew what that individual went through, and then you just kind of multiply that as like, oh gosh, what did they go through, and what did they go through, and what did they go through, and what did they go through?
Well, exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to kind of humanize zombies to a certain extent. So I wanted like read or not readers, but viewers and the audience to watch it and think like, oh wow. And anytime they see a zombie movie or they see a zombie, they think like, oh, what's that guy's backstory? So like I kind of wanted to humanize the zombie and make people feel sorry for the zombie rather than just feel scared of it.
For sure, and I think that's really, really interesting. And I mean, right now, obviously, there's a lot of people on the Kickstarter that are really, really supporting it, that really, really like it. So
Yeah.
hopefully, it'll just continue to do really, really well.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm very surprised with all the support. It's only been a few days and it's going great.
We're already past 10%.
Yeah, that's nuts. But it's
So
till
mhm,
it's till April 25th, right?
the 16th.
Or the 16th. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, what would you say your favorite movie or some of your favorite movies of all time are?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, I definitely all time I would probably say, I know this is very cliche, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars ever since I was a little kid, and I'm there every day one. Every time a new movie comes out, I'm there. I love Star Wars, but that aside, because that everyone loves Star Wars, I guess my favorite movie of all time would probably be either Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs. I love Quentin Tarantino. His movies are just so unique, and the style of it just looks so cool. And like I mentioned before, his dialogue is amazing. Like listening to two people have conversations in his movies is just like orgasmic. And yeah, so I guess I would say Pulp Fiction. That's my all-time Pulp Fiction. If I were to narrow it down to one.
You know, it's funny because do you know Lyle Groninger by any chance?
He's directing the shorts too, isn't he?
Oh yeah, of course you would know him. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's funny because I was doing this exact same interview with him yesterday, and I was asking him what's his favorite movie, and he also said that Pulp Fiction is definitely up there.
No way. Well, see, there you go. It's a match made in heaven. We got a good team going on right now.
Exactly. Um, and it's funny because because the first time I watched, I didn't like you guys probably watched Pulp Fiction in your teens.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw it, I think it was like grade eight summer, grade eight. So I was like 13, 14.
Okay, because see, I didn't even know Quentin Tarantino existed back then. Like when I was in the eighth grade, it was Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, that is very true. I love both of those franchises in the eighth grade as well.
But I mean, when I watched Pulp Fiction for the first time, which was definitely in the last few years, something that was interesting about that, and um, so I didn't quite fully understand it when I first watched it, but then after watching like clips on YouTube and whatnot afterwards, it starts to make more sense about how much depth there is
Yeah,
underneath.
and the way he layered it and kind of told these separate stories that intertwine together is kind of one of the reasons why I like it so much. And it's a good study for writers because it's a good way to it's a unique style of storytelling that they don't traditionally. Well, they do it now, but at that time when it came out, they didn't really traditionally do it like that, where they told it like kind of separately and they all intertwined later. So that's one of the reasons why I love it.
What like you mentioned about like the separate storylines. Do you think there's a couple other great things that potential writers could take away from Pulp Fiction and use that as a case study?
Um,
Like,
yeah,
why do you think it stands out for its writing?
I guess the sense of mystery that he leaves you, like a lot of people, like even today, a lot of people still talk about the Band-Aid on the back of I forget his character's name, but Ving Rhames, his character. A lot of people have theories about the Band-Aid on the back of his neck, and everyone's still talking today about what's in the briefcase. And I think that's an interesting style of writing because the audience is so captivated and they don't even know what they're captivated by. They don't know what's in the case. They don't. It leaves a lot of stuff up to interpretation, and it starts a lot of interesting conversations between people, which is what you want to do to your audience with your movies. Is start conversations and let them actually think and talk about it. So him, I guess, leaving like putting kind of little mysteries into your movies and let the audience kind of create their own theories, and it's kind of engaging them as well because they get to, oh, like I wonder what was in the case or why he was doing that, and it kind of leaves it to their interpretation too, which is cool.
hmm And I mean, one of the other things I really like about Quentin Tarantino a lot. I mean, well, I can't really describe much of his writing, but because I pay more attention to, like I try and pay attention to everything equally, but I'm always more captivated by how everything looks and sounds. I'm not so
Yeah.
much thinking about, oh, like how was that written, how's the dialogue there, because sometimes dialogue and whatnot can also be improvised, so it's hard to tell
Hmm.
which was acted, which was scripted. but one thing that I really felt strongly about Quentin Tarantino is he's like the metal rock band of the film industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just gore, excitement, blood, everything, cursing, everything.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
And when it comes to the gore and stuff, like his movies are pretty bloody and violent, but he doesn't overdo it. Like whenever there's blood or there's violence, it definitely like it's there because it's driving the plot forward and it pertains to what's like it pertains to the actual story. He's not just, putting in dumb action scenes every 5 seconds and big fight scenes just to like schmooze the crowd. It actually serves a purpose, and that's what it kind of like, it gives you a little shocker too when something like that starts to happen. You're like, oh my god, shit's going down now.
mm-hmm. Well, I mean, as soon as you said that, the first thing that comes to my mind is that one scene in Pulp Fiction where I can't remember the characters' names either, but it's when the two detectives are driving and they've got the guy, one of the kids, back in the car, and can't even remember the other guy's name. So he turns around, looks at him holding the gun, and he accidentally triggers it and shoots him in the face, and blood goes
Yeah.
everywhere. But as he said, it does drive a plot. It takes everything and just goes this way.
Yeah, because after he did that, then they had to go and call their guy to come and clean up the mess and whatever. And then yeah, it kind of it drove the story forward. It wasn't just some stupid scene. And that's a perfect example of how just all of a sudden, like, you think things are going good and whatever, and then boom, just this guy gets shot in the face, and now the audience is on the edge of their seat again. And that's what I love about his writing is it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It keeps you captivated during the whole time.
Hmm. Did you also see there was another Quentin Tarantino movie that just recently came out? It was called The Hateful Eight, I believe it was.
Yeah, The Hateful Eight, and that's his eighth movie that he's made too, which is, I guess that's why he called it Hateful Eight. But yeah, that was that was a really good one too. That one, I really enjoyed that one because it reminded me a lot of Reservoir Dogs, which under Pulp Fiction is like my next favorite movie. It was like an old Western Reservoir Dogs, which I thought was really cool. It was just like one location basically, and it was all just character and dialogue. So I love The Hateful Eight.
Hmm. Well, I mean, even when there was a plot twist halfway through the movie, it's like, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like so much is happening, and so many twists and so many cool things are happening, and it's all taking place in this one spot. So that's why I think he's such a smart writer.
I mean, now that I think about it, I mean, there are several classics that, yeah, they all, like, for instance, 12 Angry Men is
Yeah,
all done in one set, really. And it's good acting, good writing.
yeah, exactly. Or movies like not The Room, but just Room, not The
Yes.
Room,
Big
Room.
difference.
Yeah, there's a big difference. But yeah, the movie Room with Brie Larson is a good example of that. Like, it's just pretty much one spot, and it's just such a moving film.
For sure. Um, and just out of curiosity, because I want to go back to another movie that you mentioned, which was the Star Wars movies. Now, I don't want to even just disregard as like, oh yeah, everyone likes it, but I think there's certain things that we can even take away from the Star Wars movies. Now, first off, so I mean, obviously we're at what now, 8 Star Wars movies?
Episode
9?
8. Yeah, 8.
8 now.
Yeah.
Uh, so out of all the 8, which one is your number one favorite Star Wars movie?
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Empire Strike. I know that's why everyone says, but I think that was the best one because, um, first of all, it had one of the best like reveals in movie history, with Darth Vader saying he's Luke's father, and they took. It was such a successful movie because the first movie was like very not lighthearted, but it was more like family friendly, and it was very like bright and colorful. And then Empire Strikes Back is when they kind of went the darker route and kind of took this sci-fi idea and kind of made it more rooted and uh, people could relate to it because a lot of people have issues in their families, and even though it's a weird like crazy space opera, it's still relatable, and it was more grounded and rooted in my opinion, at least. And that's why I liked it. It felt more obviously not realistic because it's a space movie, but it just felt more genuine.
Now, what do you think about the kind of like the voice of Star Wars? And what I mean by that is it's got a very specific tone and language with its dialogue, how characters interact with each other. Like you can definitely tell the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek and Lord of the Rings and Blade Runner and whatnot. So, what did you think about what do you think about the tone and language of the Star Wars, how they present itself?
I I feel like it's got a mix of, which I think it was cool, is it's got a mix of like old, not old English, but kind of like a medieval sense to it, like the way certain species on certain planets, the way they act towards other species on other planets. It's very like past and present all in one. Like you have Han Solo, who's kind of like this like quick talking bounty hunter or whatever, and then you have like royalty like Princess Leia and all that kind of stuff. And I think those two worlds coming together is cool. So like when it comes to the tone and the dialogue of Star Wars, yeah, it's very, I guess you could say it's a lot of characters who are very different coming together to obtain this one goal and work together to get that one goal. And that's, I don't know, that's kind of what my take on it. It's kind of hard. I've never thought about the actual tone of Star Wars, but yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
guess that would be my take on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, I was just curious, and I mean, uh, it's funny. What I mean, one every time I think about Empire Strikes Back, I mean, I don't know about you, but one of the best scenes that I can definitely think of in terms of the writing has got to be the scene where Yoda teaches Luke about the Force,
Yeah,
and he says, and Luke at the end says, "I don't believe it," and then Yoda says, "That is why you failed."
yeah, I love that part.
To me, I think that's the best form of writing in the all of Star Wars.
Yeah, even you saying that line gave me chills. And because just, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like you have this young kid, and he's not in over his head, but he's been chosen for something that it's out of his league from what he's thinking, because he doesn't know that he has all these abilities, and he doesn't know what he can truly do. So it's just this little kid, not little, but it's just this teenager who's trying to figure out his role in all of this. And then he has this ancient being that's taking him under his wing and showing him the ways of the Force and stuff. So I think it's a really cool, the relationships that they create in Star Wars is great. Like Yoda, Luke, Chewie, and Han Solo. Like you don't hear Chewie speak at all. He just makes grunt noises, but you love the relationship between Chewie and Han. And yeah, so yeah, that's my answer to that.
Hmm. So tell me a bit more about your process. So when you want to sit down and write a story, how does that usually work?
So I have a cork board, it's like a bulletin board, and it's sectioned off into three acts, basically: Act One, Act Two, Act Three. And then I just sit there with like post-it notes or whatever, and I just write down like story beats and ideas and stuff. And then eventually, once I have enough, I'll start piecing it together on the board and see what makes sense. Like, oh, I could put this, like, oh, he could do this here, and then that will cause this to happen. And then it's a good way to kind of visualize the story when it's right in front of you and you see all the notes around, and then you can kind of mix them around. You say, oh, this doesn't work, and you toss it or whatever. So yeah, basically, I just think of a general idea, and then I start thinking of like character traits, and I start thinking about like what what the character wants. And then that's when I sit down and I just look at the board and I start putting on like post-it notes of what could happen here, what could happen there, this potential ending, blah, blah, blah. If I don't like this, I'll throw this out. And yeah, it's just a good way to visualize your story.
Okay, and then um, what script software do you use?
Uh, I use Celtex because I'm very cheap and it's free, but usually the industry standard is Final Draft.
Yep.
Yeah. That if anyone wants to become like a serious writer, like I would recommend getting Final Draft because it has a lot of features and stuff on it. I use on my other computer I have Final Draft, but on my laptop I use Celtex because I usually use my laptop mostly, and it's free, so that's good. And Celtics does a lot that Final Draft does. Don't get me wrong; it does basically everything you need to write. I mean, I've submitted tons and tons of scripts and stuff to people using Celtics, and they said, it's great. So, it yeah, Celtics or Final Draft.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I can definitely agree with you on Celtics because I actually use Celtics for all my shorts.
Yeah, exactly. And it has other formats on it, like Celtics. You can write comic books. Like I write comic books as well, so. That's Celtex is what I use to write comics and my scripts, and you can write novels on there. You can do all sorts of stuff with Celtex, so it's good.
Hmm. Now, now it's funny because I don't know if you saw my well, I think you saw my YouTube channel, so I started doing some tips and whatnot on writing.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, I'd love to get your feedback on sometime. Maybe you can debunk some of them, be like, no, James, you do it this way, or whatever.
Well,
But
no.
no, was I close to being on the dot?
Well, yeah. I mean, writing is very subjective for one, so there's no like set in stone right or wrong way to do something. But no, I mean, you were totally right. There's nothing that I was like, oh no, that's not right at all. Like, it's basically what you feel. I mean, obviously there's a structure. There's like a structure to when you're writing a script. But generally, like, just write what you feel, and then everyone's first draft, anyone's first script of anything is terrible. Like anytime you write something and you finish it, that's great. Finishing a screenplay is a lot of work. So if you do that, that's amazing. But everyone, even professional writers, their first draft is going to have a lot of problems. So the best thing to do is just finish it, put as many eyes on it as possible, and get feedback, and then just learn from your mistakes, basically.
Hmm. So, what kind of projects like? What types of projects are you working on right now? I mean, obviously you're writing a few shorts. What else are you doing?
So yeah, I'm working on this short with you, and then I'm writing this comic book right now. I wrote the first 2 issues. It's going to be a 5-issue like mini series. I wrote the first 2 issues. I'm working on the next 3, and then basically I just need to get artists. I have concept art for it, but I don't have actual like a full book like made. I just have the scripts. So once I'm done that, I just have to get some artists and then put the book together, and then I'm gonna try and get to shows and like Fan Expo and Comic Con and all that kind of stuff, and try and get it out there. But that's basically what's eating up a lot of my writing time right now, is just writing these comic books. And yeah.
Interesting. So, what's the difference between writing a comic and a script?
Comic book, you definitely have to be I mean, I always recommend when you're writing to write visually, so try and paint a picture with your words. Um, but comic books, like, you really have to be descriptive, because you have to realize that like the artist is going to be reading the script and he's going to be doing his artwork based on what he reads, right? So when you're doing a scene or whatever in a comic book, you really have to be descriptive of what it looks like, the angle, if it's close up, if it's far away, what's in the background, the colors and all that kind of stuff. So it's just really, really, really descriptive writing when you're writing a comic book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Now, are you also working on features?
Right now, no, I'm not working on any features. I'm working on this animated script. I know some people that I could possibly get like an internship at this animation studio. So I've been writing this feature script that I had for a while, this idea that I had for a while about basically it's about like a house cat who is found by a pack of lions and is raised by lions. And so yeah, that's basically what I'm working on right now. And then I have another idea that I was actually working on at Toronto Film School that I kind of put on the back burner, but it's kind of like a superhero sci-fi, kind of like Unbreakable. If you've seen Unbreakable,
No.
it's kind of like that. If you should watch Unbreakable if you like superhero stuff, it's a great movie. But yeah, that's basically what I've been working on.
Okay, cool. So now I know that we've kind of talked about well, I suggested to you about the blog part.
Hmm.
Are you thinking about doing the blogs?
Yeah, for sure. That was actually like I've been before you brought it up. Like I actually thought about doing it for a while. I just never came around to doing it. But I had I guess they're not blogs, but I had video. Like I did movie reviews for a while on YouTube, and so I want to kind of transfer that over to blogs and kind of write movie reviews and just talk about movies with people. So yeah, I'm probably definitely gonna do that. And one of my friends is like super huge into blogging and stuff, so he's gonna help me out and like with a website and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Way to go. So
yeah, man.
um like as soon as you have those blogs up, I mean, send me a link to the blogs and I'll make sure I link it in the video.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure.
So I've got a big question for you now because something I'm actually working on right now. So I mean, on top of a lot of the different things I'm trying to do. So obviously right now I'm working on, aside from becoming one of them, I'm actually trying to develop a short of my own that I've written, and I'm also producing and directing and trying to
Okay.
basically produce on my own. Um, and while I've been trying to write that, I also all of a sudden had this really big, massive idea for essentially a cinematic universe, kind of like Marvel, kind of like Game of Thrones, uh, where there's like a multitude of storylines. We kind of focus on the individual storylines, these individual heroes, and then they start coming together for one big, massive cause.
Yeah.
Now, one of the funny issues I keep having is, I mean, I've got, I don't know about you, but I've got easily 95% of everything in my head, and I'm really terrible at writing stuff down.
Hmm.
And when it comes down to actually writing the stuff down, they all just leave.
Yeah.
So what do you usually do when you're constantly coming up with ideas on a daily basis?
I carry around a notebook. I have a notebook that I bring around with me everywhere, and if I have an idea, I just write it down basically. And usually, I mean, all your ideas are important, of course, but I kind of like prioritize. Like, so if I'm like, oh man, that's a really good idea, and I write it down, I'll put like a little asterisk beside it, just so like it's a note to myself, like remember this one. But yeah, basically just try and carry around like a little pocket-sized notebook with you, and or on your phone. Your phone has the notebook app on it, like built in. So anytime you think of something, just jot it down and save it.
Okay, I'll definitely have to try and do that more often. Have you ever are there any like books or master classes that you've looked into in regards to helping you improve your craft?
Yeah. Funny enough, you mentioned masterclass. Like, I haven't actually signed up for a masterclass, but I've been looking up like a lot of reviews and stuff for Aaron. I want to take Aaron Sorkin's masterclass, but I don't know like what masterclasses entail. So before like I spend all that money, I want to like get other people's perspective on it. But Aaron Sorkin is one of my favorite writers, and he has a masterclass, so I'm kind of interested to take that. But stuff that I've done already. One of a really good book, a really good screenwriting book, is called Save the Cat. That was probably like one of my favorites. He's passed away now, but he's a writer who wrote like, he didn't write anything like spectacular. It's kind of a guide to help you polish up your scripts, and a guide to how to pitch it properly and how to get your script sold. So Save the Cat is good for that. It kind of tells you how to structure your scripts in a way that will entice like movie producers, and it tells you like what they actually look for when they're reading scripts. But as for creativity wise, like just someone talking about their writing process and what it's like to be a writer and coming up with ideas and all that kind of stuff, is Story by Robert McKee is a really good book. So yeah, if any writers out there, I would recommend those two: Story by Robert McKee and Save the Cat by, hold on, I have the book right here. Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. Those two.
Okay, and nice room, by the way.
Oh yeah, get a little glimpse here.
I didn't know you were a fan of guitar.
Of guitar?
Yeah, just because I see a poster behind you, and I also
Oh
saw
yeah,
a
no.
guitar in the corner.
Yeah, no, I play bass, and I play guitar a little bit, but I'm kind of just teaching myself. But I play bass mostly. Yeah, and I play drums too.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what movies are you looking forward to that are yet to come out?
Oh man. Well, I've probably watched the new Avengers trailer like 1,000 times, so I already have my ticket. So I would probably say Avengers: Infinity War. Um, but I'm really excited for. I'm actually gonna go see it on Saturday, I think. Isle of Dogs. I love Wes Anderson movies as well. More for the visual standpoint. His movies, the way they look, are just, it's so cool. I don't know if you've seen like Grand Budapest or any of those movies, but his movies are just so like vibrant and unique. I don't even know how to explain the way his movies look. They're just so different, and I love that. And yeah, so Isle of Dogs, um, and he uses like stop motion animation mixed with like his weird visual mind. So I can't wait for that.
Well, I mean, it's funny how we talk about directors because, I mean, I always have a huge appreciation for anyone, any filmmaker, editor, cinematographer, writers, composers that have their unique style to the point where
Yeah,
you could watch any movie without even knowing who made it and be like, wait a second, is this made by so and so, or was that written by so and so? And you look up later like, oh, it was.
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I mean, you can tell a Wes Anderson movie. He's got that distinct look about him.
Hmm. And directing and visuals aside, also his storytelling is really cool too. Specifically, Grand Budapest, the way he tells that story is through different perspectives, and it's a writer sitting down with the guy who actually went through the stuff that happens in Grand Budapest, and they're sitting over dinner talking about it, but you see everything unfold. And yeah, so the way he writes too is also really good. I appreciate a really good writer slash director, so that's why I love like Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson. They write and they write their vision, and they put their vision on screen at the same time. So that's what I love.
Absolutely. And I mean, now it's funny. So, I mean, we've already depicted Isle of Dogs, but again, I want to go back to the Marvel movies because I mean, I've heard there's so much different reviews regarding like the Marvel movies in general. There's a lot of issues with many different things. A lot of people like the fact that you've got these great heroes and these great characters that are just A, they're coming together, but also B, these characters that you actually do like, and then they start to develop and get better and better and better. Especially someone like say Captain America that went from no one really liked him to now everyone loves him.
Yeah.
So writing wise, what do you think is so interesting to take away from all the Marvel movies generally?
Well, what they did kind of changed movies like forever. Like they started a trend where you know they're like, all right, we're gonna make Iron Man, and then at the end of Iron Man, we're gonna tease the Avengers, and then so they basically were like, we're gonna make all these standalone movies with all these awesome heroes that kids and adults grew up with. So we're gonna start with Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, etc. And we're gonna make all the separate movies, and then they're gonna come together for one big team up event. And I just think that was like such a genius idea from watching Iron Man 1, and then at the end when you see Nick Fury and he's talking about the Avengers Initiative, that right there locked me in for the next 10 years of whatever they're going to do, because now you just know that, oh my god, there's going to be a a huge thing over the horizon that's going to happen with all these characters, and they're going to team up and kick ass. And that's why I think the DC movies are failing, because it's kind of rushed. They jumbled it together. They're trying to copy Marvel but rush it. And so they had Man of Steel, and then they had Batman versus Superman, but Wonder Woman was in there for some reason. And then they had Suicide Squad and Justice League, and like they should have just did what Marvel did, one superhero movie after another, and then have the Justice League, and it just, that will get an audience hyped. That's what Marvel did. It got a whole group of people locked in to see all these movies because they are going to follow it to the end. And now we're almost there, I think.
Well, I mean, I haven't watched the Justice League. I did watch Wonder Woman, and I did watch Suicide Squad. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, can you imagine how much better Justice? Well, actually, I've heard reviews that the acting was superb in Justice League, and I've seen a few clips, and I can't really argue. Um, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, great people. But can you imagine how much more awesome that movie could have been if they did like 3 Wonder Woman movies, 3 Flash movies, 3 Ben Affleck Batman movies, followed by well, you've got the Merman. No, he's not called the Merman.
Aquaman, yeah.
Aquaman, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, I would have loved to see a whole trilogy on Aquaman, especially with someone like Jason Momoa, and then just you have all these legends coming together, and it's like, oh.
Exactly. In which they're kind of doing it backwards, is because they had Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and then Wonder Woman, and then they had Justice League come out, but then they didn't introduce, like, Aquaman hasn't had his own, like, wasn't properly introduced. They're missing some of the core members, like Green Lantern's not there, Martian Manhunter's not there, and I just feel like they're doing it backwards. Now they're making a standalone Aquaman movie, they're doing a standalone Batman movie, The Flash, so they kind of are doing it backwards, which I think is weird. And after the terrible reviews that Batman vs Superman got, and Justice League wasn't as bad, but in my opinion it was still not very good. Now people are kind of like, well, they're not as excited for the standalones now, and it's just going to go downhill. I think they should just kind of erase everything and just start fresh.
I 100% agree, and because that's something I'm also trying to do with my movies as well, is that, yeah, just like focus on one storyline and not jumble everything around. So you're absolutely right.
And that's another thing you mentioned, was that like your idea, how like you have a bunch of different people or whatever coming together and then eventually working together for one goal, like kind of like Avengers. And that's kind of becoming a trend on itself, is creating these cinematic universes to draw in their audiences. Like they're doing it with Godzilla now. They had the Godzilla movie, and then they had Kong Skull Island, and now then there was that after credit tease at the end of Kong Skull Island. And now they revealed that it's going to be like their own cinematic universe with Godzilla, King Kong, King Ghidorah, all the monsters from before, which is great. And like I brought up before, that movie Unbreakable, it's a Shyamalan movie. I know he hasn't been doing so good as of late, but it's a really good Shyamalan movie. And he is starting to do that himself, because I don't know if you've seen Split, but the movie Split that he made is connected to Unbreakable. So he's starting his own cinematic universe as well. So it's starting to become like a trend.
So I want to go back to the Marvel thing, but one quick question. So talking about connecting movies, I also heard this one rumor with Quentin Tarantino that secretly he's actually connected all 8 of his movies together. Now, I haven't heard anything about what that one connection is, but do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I don't know too many details on it, but I know yeah, he said like the case from Pulp Fiction was the same briefcase that they had in Reservoir Dogs, and there was something about Django and Inglourious Basterds that linked together, but I can't remember the details. But yeah, there's a lot of theories that have risen from his movies about that kind of. One of the biggest ones is yeah, the case from Reservoir Dogs is the same briefcase from Pulp Fiction.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought there was more of an underlying like branch that connects all of them together for one thing. No.
You're probably right. I haven't heard that. I just know like the random like fan theories that have come out, but you could be right. I'll probably, as soon as this conversation's done, I'm probably gonna go Google it.
Well, I mean, how much are you willing to bet that? I mean, the last movie Quentin Tarantino will probably ever release in his entire life. Then he's going to go on like, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, or whatnot, and be like, "Oh, by the way, guys, here's the connection." And everyone's going to be like, "What?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of what they did with that movie. Like I brought up before, that movie Split. Everyone just thought it was just another Shyamalan movie, but then at the end, you realize it's connected to his other movie, and then you're just like, holy shit! It just blows your mind. And and yeah, so I'm sure there is like a connection that he's thought of and fished together. I'm not too sure, but it sounds interesting.
Well, I mean, even going back to the developing the characters thing, because to me, I think the one big thing that a lot of people do, like, and this is certainly what I'm absolutely obsessed with, is when I see characters go through like some like I don't know how you would the proper wording in writing would be, but I mean, for us in the filmmaking class, the simplest version of to talk about a character's journey is like happy and then really sad and then really really happy and then really really sad and then everything's all positive and then everything shit hits the fan. I
Basically,
mean, that's why I'm also very obsessed with Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, and 3. Looking at like Will Turner and Elizabeth, they're like everything's happy and then they meet the dead people and then it's the Kraken and Jack Sparrow
yeah,
dies and then just shit hits the fan by number 3.
yeah,
Um,
and a lot of a lot of writers, yeah, adhere to that structure. And one of the things that I heard, Trey Parker, who created South Park, when uh, he talked about his process of like when he's writing an episode, and basically he brought it down to just, you know the character wants this to happen, but then this happens because that happened, and then that just kind of like helps him structure his story. It's like a character wants this to happen, but this happens because that happened, and like it's kind of true when you like look at other movies. They kind of follow that same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, even going back to Pulp Fiction, as you mentioned, or as we spoke about, like, you kind of think, oh, they're just going to take that teenager to the police station, everything's fine. But as soon as he accidentally shot the bullet to the teenager, their whole story goes on a completely different path, and that's how they end up where they end up at the end of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. One small little slip up of him accidentally shooting the gun, and it just completely changes the whole trajectory of what they were trying to do and the whole journey itself.
Mm-hmm. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh, I do watch Game of Thrones.
Awesome. I mean, how can you not?
I love that show.
Well, it's funny because every time I try and talk to people about like my family's not really huge on the whole swearing, gore, and whatnot. Like they're not that type of fans. I mean, I loved Game of Thrones in the sense that it was just raw and just real,
Yeah.
but had that fantasy element to it. Um, but it's hard to explain to people that like yes, in season 1 there's a lot of nudity, but by the time you get to season 7, there's like no nudity whatsoever.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, basically, yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of nudity in the first couple seasons, but nudity, I mean, it's the fantasy world, but they're very much inspired by medieval like events, and that kind of stuff was going on all the time, and so it kind of makes it more realistic, like more true to actual history. Is like that kind of stuff was actually going on. Like a king would be talking to his people while like some girl was going down on him. Like it's just like random shit like that. And it kind of makes it more realistic. But now you're definitely right. They're focusing more on the actual, battle between all the families and the actual throne and stuff. But yeah, and like you said, that's one of the reasons why I love this show is it it feels real, and it feels very realistic and actual like real life problems that these people go through, but it's such a fantasy world. So I think that's just like, I don't know, it's so cool and so unique.
Well, I mean, even talking about character arcs, I mean, like when I look at like Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, I mean, there's the moment in season 7 where they meet for the first time, and I mean, someone who just jumps on Game of Thrones are like, okay, big whoop, it's two random characters, but once you've been following them for 7 years, and you see that they're going through up and down and up and down and up and down, and just like the worst case scenarios for Daenerys and the worst things for Jon Snow, like getting stabbed and dying and then coming back to life and whatnot. Like there's just
Yeah.
the depth just goes so deep, and it's like holy crap, just really rich characters coming together.
Yeah. And that's why I like, you get it jumps from place to place and you see what's going on with each individual and how that overall affects the grand scheme of things, and it kind of all comes together like that. I'm in the middle of reading the Game of Thrones books right now, and instead of like chapters, it's just their name. Like it's okay, let's see what Jon's doing now, and then all right, what's Tyrion up to, and then that kind of I feel like it's better because you're following the actual person through their journey and how it all intertwines later.
Now, something that's also different about Game of Thrones, comparing it to Marvel, um, something that I love to hear your opinion on this, because something that like Marvel's doing right now is the long story short is everyone's still alive. Game of
Yeah.
Thrones, like they lost like 75% of the cast that you saw in season 1.
Yeah.
So now that being said, Game of Thrones, that creates a very interesting structure, because here's everyone that we know, and then by the end of it, it kind of gets this tipping point, and you're just like, oh my gosh, who's going to die now? As opposed to Marvel, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's theories that people are going to die in Infinity War, but right now it's like, no one's really dying.
Well, that's why some people they like TV shows more because you can do that kind of stuff. Like they don't have 10-year contracts like Robert Downey Jr. and shit did. So you can get away with doing that kind of stuff on TV, like having a character like when Ned Stark. Okay, well, spoiler if you haven't seen it, you're an idiot.
Everyone should
But
have seen season 1 by now.
yeah, by now. So I don't care. But anyways, when Ned Stark dies at the end of season 1, that literally that just blew everyone's mind because they thought that Sean Bean, he's a big actor, he's the main character of the show, he's going to be around for a while, and then they just kill him off immediately. And so that's why I think TV, a lot more people gravitate towards, because they can get away with giving you those shocks and that wow factor and that kind of stuff. When it comes to Marvel, that's one of the reasons why, like, I love the Marvel movies, but that's one of the reasons why I that's like a little problem I have with them, is there's no sense of like you don't feel like when someone dies, you're like, oh, he'll be back, like he's not actually dead. It's no big deal. So like there's no emotion to it. Like there's no sense of like, oh my god, like that just happened. Because anytime someone dies, it's just like same within Batman vs Superman. Like when Superman died, it's like whatever, he'll be back. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or yeah, like Samuel L. Jackson's character goes, and then you see him in Avengers 2, or
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But I think Tony Stark is somehow related to Ned Stark, but I'll get into that later.
I mean, let's get into that now. I mean, I don't have any more questions off the top of my head. So, do tell me, why do you think there's a connection between Ned Stark and Tony Stark?
Well, that was more of a joke, but I do think that they're similar in certain ways. That like obviously Ned Stark is more reserved and he's not as out there as Tony Stark, but they both have this sense of like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do it like for the greater good. And that's kind of like a very common thing between those two. But no, yeah, I just said that because I saw a really cool painting in this comic book store that I go to. And it was like a really realistic looking painting of like Tony Stark and Ned Stark in battle together. And I just thought it was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, one more question. So, because talking about comedies and whatnot, and the fact that we're talking about superheroes and stuff, and the rawness. So, a movie that popped to my mind is Deadpool movies. Have you ever seen
Okay.
Deadpool?
Deadpool? Yeah.
So, because when I watched Deadpool, I mean, something that I found very, very drastic about those is not only the fact that is an R-rated movie of the existing superhero movies, but there's something about it that's just so punch in the mouth, straightforward, like, F you, we're just gonna make fun of literally everything and just throw jokes in just for the sake of it. How'd you feel about the writing for the Deadpool?
Well, yeah, like you said, it just had this like fu attitude where it was like we're gonna do this our way, and like from X-Men Origins Wolverine, they totally botched the character of Deadpool, so this was a good revival for them, and I think Deadpool is a perfect example of the studio actually listening to their audience and
Yes.
actually finally taking what people were complaining about and their ideas and actually working on that and saying like, Deadpool is a character who's always breaking the fourth wall and stuff. So it would be cool if they made his own movie and he can bring up the shitty X-Men Origins version because that's the type of character he is, and kind of just totally redo it and give the fans the Deadpool that they wanted and deserved. So that was like a good perfect example of the studio finally just saying, all right, like, what do you guys want to see? And then they actually did it. So that's one of the reasons why I love Deadpool.
Totally, 100% agree. I mean, yeah, I mean, how many jokes can you imagine are in there? They're like when he's making fun of even Green Lantern, like don't
Yeah.
make like what does he say? Don't make me.
Don't
He
make the
says,
suit animated.
yeah, don't make the suit animated.
Yeah. And that's another reason why I love them, because I'm a huge Green Lantern is like my guy. Like I even have a Green Lantern tattoo,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, I love Green Lantern. So when the Ryan Reynolds movie came out, I was very depressed because that movie sucked. And then yeah, they they brought it up in Deadpool, and I just thought that was hilarious. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love the movie. Is it's so witty, it's smart, and then it's got good action. It's just got everything you want in a movie.
Awesome. So this has been good talk. I'm just gonna wrap it up now. So uh, one final question, I guess, is actually two final questions. So the first one is what, aside from becoming one of them, the comics that you just spoke about, uh, what projects are you working on right now that if anyone is listening, they should keep an eye out for?
I would probably say this sci-fi movie that I'm working on, like the superhero one I was talking about, is kind of like it comes from not personal experiences, but it's one of the more personal stories I wrote, and obviously it's really hard for obviously a writer to get a movie going and getting a movie actually made. So I don't know where this journey is going to take me, but this is the next one that I really want to focus on and try and get it made somehow, because I think I think it's a cool story that everyone can relate to, and it hasn't. I'm not saying it hasn't been done before, but it's unique, because every idea, like every writer says, like every idea has been done, but it's how you put your own twist on it. So I think it's a special story, and hopefully I can get it out there for people to see. But the title's still pending, so I don't even know what to tell you. But yeah.
Fair enough. It's funny because I got to pause when you say that. When you said that other writers say that all the ideas been taken, because it's funny because I hear this all the time, and in the film industry, but everywhere else, and it's funny because see, here's my firm belief, and that is, if we were to take every single idea in the universe that has ever been discovered, and put it within the circle, like that's all the ideas we've discovered. But meanwhile, there's all of this. So
Yeah.
my point is, here's all the ideas that we have discovered, and here's all the ideas that we haven't. So there is ideas out there. It's just we haven't discovered them yet.
So you disagree with like every idea's been taken. It's just your own how you put your take on it, is what you're saying.
Yes, and I mean,
Okay.
I and I'm also just saying that there have been people who have said that all the ideas have been taken. They've been saying that for decades, even 100 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being in Walt Disney's days and where they said, "Oh, that's it. We're just going to have these blatant, black and white animated silly comedy cartoons, because that's all they were.
Yeah.
Everyone during the 1930s, that's all everyone saw them as, is just these comedic, childish, black and white cartoon animations, and then he turned it into full-length animations with that you actually felt for, that no one even heard of. It was like, whoa, now we've got all these legendary classics.
But yeah, but a lot of those classics are based off of other works, like obviously, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and
Yeah.
like all those kind of, and the Jungle Book. Those are all from other source materials. But like the Lion King, for example, which was I guess you could say an original Disney animated idea. But if you think about it, it's a lot like Macbeth, and then, or sorry, not Macbeth, Hamlet. And then when you get like Lion King 2, that's like Romeo and Juliet. So like, I'm not saying every idea has been taken, but you can definitely, like, any idea that comes to light or any like new movie that you see, you can definitely take parts from it and relate it to other things, because like I said, it's how the writer puts his own on it.
For sure. Going back to your point, because you're absolutely right that I mean, we could, because as creative people, we could talk about, what about, yeah, original stories. Kind of bring up the Disney movies. Like, yes, those were based off existing stories. I just think that there's still more that you can do. Same with,
Yeah,
I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because, yeah, there's been Pirates of the Caribbean, not Pirates of the Caribbean, sorry, there's been pirate movies, been swashbuckling movies in the past, but they took something very, very, they took a very special and unique approach with pirates and made it special and made it their own. So that's why I'm always a firm, and even in fantasy, I love fantasy, and there's always a unique take that you can do on fantasy movies that just make them your own.
yeah. Well, like Pirates is actually a good example, because Pirates of the Caribbean was a ride at Disney, and they took a ride from Disney and turned it into this huge movie franchise. So that is alone extremely impressive. And now they kind of started a thing too, because Tomorrowland was a pretty big movie, and that's based off of a ride. That movie, The Country Bears, wasn't that great of a movie. I liked it as a kid, but it's not that great of a movie. But again, another movie that's just based off of a ride, and they made a whole narrative from just based off of a ride. So I think that's pretty cool.
Totally. So just before we finish up, so just in case there is like an ambitious script writer or book author, or just someone who wants to get into the movie industry and start writing and whatnot, what kind of advice would you give to that person that just wants to start out?
I would say always write, write every day. Try, and even if you think it's a dumb idea, it's whatever. Just write it on a piece of paper, type it out. Just constantly write, and don't overthink things, because, like I said before, uh, you're never gonna have a perfect writing. Like, either if you're writing a novel or a comic book or script, whatever, it's never going to be perfect right off of the bat. So don't get discouraged. Um, Make sure you can take criticism, because that is a huge part of this industry, is taking constructive criticism. So that's huge. And try nowadays, like back then, it was easier for people to kind of like get people to read their scripts and get it made. Like, I'm talking way back, like back in the 80s and 70s and 60s and whatever. But nowadays, with all the stuff that we have at our disposal, I would definitely say, like, do what we're doing, and just do it like, try and do it yourself. Like, try and get some friends together, write something unique, and just film it. And even if you feel like it's not good, it's whatever, it's something to put on your resume, it's something that you have, that you created. So just try and get your voice out there, and just always constantly be writing and creating and collaborating with people. And yeah, and now, like, with social media and everything, it's really easy to network with people. So like me and you, we're in a bunch of groups on Facebook, like for writers, for directors, and just for people to kind of connect with each other in the creative field. So yeah, just try and do all those things.
That's great. I love that advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
And yeah, so I think that's it. Thank you so much for the talk. Thank you so much for your time. I know that was a long hour, maybe over an hour, but I mean, I really, really appreciated your time.
No, that was a good talk. I love talking about movies and stuff. And yeah, it's good seeing you again. It's been a while. I haven't talked to you since school, so yeah,
Mhm.
it's good. But yeah, man, I'm excited for that. And yeah, thanks you for taking this chance, I guess.
Yeah, love to. Again, love making movies.
Yeah, man. And yeah, if anytime you and Lyle want to like meet up and talk about this, just let me know.
For sure. Sounds good. Well, listen, you have a good night, all right?
Yeah, you too, man. Take care.
You too.
Peace.
Peace.